of trying to structure this is to give a short presentation about the organization, the Downtown Alliance, formerly Building a Better Brattleboro. A little bit about myself as well. I know I've met some of you individually, but I have a couple slides about a little bit about my past and doing similar but different work. And then I had created some illustrations based on some of the visioning that we did in this spring, so it kind of helped articulate, hopefully, some of the ideas people had brought to our attention at the onset of this exercise. I hope that this is a fruitful endeavor for all of us. I think just by the sheer numbers of people and the diversity of people that came out to this meeting, I think we're going to have a pretty charged conversation today, and I'm really looking forward to diving into it. So the first thing I thought we'd do, if you got the invite via Facebook, which I think most of you got, there was a homework assignment to think of a couple places that you thought maybe you've traveled in your life. It could be another town or city, it could be somewhere in the wilderness, a place in your heart, it doesn't matter, but the prompt was to name a place that downtown should work to emulate and why. So why don't we go around the room, and you can do it off the cuff, or maybe you came with that information, just so we can sort of get a landscape of, we know how beautiful and wonderful and awesome Brattleboro is, but as we move forward, sometimes it's good to learn best practices and there we go, there's best patterns. And take cues from other communities or other places that we know and love. One of the things that we could do here from this point, and I'm going to get into now opening up the discussion into what's coming up for you. What are some of the takeaways here, both from what's been presented this past spring at our 3 visioning sessions and kind of what you guys brought up here. And mind you, my prompt in the 3 sessions in the spring was not to think about another community, but it was really just kind of magic wanding Brattleboro. You know, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we have before us? Addressing them, naming them, getting them up there, and don't worry about if it's going to happen or not, if we have enough money or not, if there's permitting for it, if it's legal. Just get it out there. Let's kind of just get it off our chest, get it out of our back pocket, and kind of put it up on a piece of paper, and that's what you see up there. And you're seeing a lot of what's there reflected here. So we could actually wipe away now all of the names of these other communities, and what we get left with is a big long laundry list that we can now merge with that to say these are some of the things that are wish lists, right? So at that, you know, without having to go in order now, just maybe showing of hands, what from this exercise, from what's been discussed from the first half hour when you had a chance to read that, what's coming up for you?
I just want to say something I have to go soon.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I personally came is because what I see and what I also hear a little bit here from various comments is that there are underutilized resources, and from my perspective, those underutilized resources are musicians. I'm a musician, and I organize an event in town that happens every 2 weeks. A dance that attracts 50 to 100 people.
Which is what?
The Brattleboro Contra Dance.
Okay.
And I do have hosted various events in town and stuff like that. What I see as a former touring musician and someone that's around here is musicians that live here but don't play here. And so what I have been really kind of working to do in networking here and there is trying to sort of connect the dots and say how, what resources actually going to bring the old-time musicians with the future collective folks, with the rock and roll musicians, with all this stuff we have. And it's just, I find, I play music in Northampton all the time, and I play music all around, very rarely in Brattleboro, because I don't know who the hell's going to come out.
Would you say Brattleboro has a music scene?
No, it has musicians. Well, there are venues. It has, Brattleboro. It's funny. There's among friends of mine, we refer to. There's this neighborhood, up, off of Canal Street, the music ghetto. Scott Ainsley, Keith Murphy, Becky Tracy. None of them play around here. You might see them every 3 months in a scattered performance here or there. But why? Why, when I go to an open mic or something, on Elliott Street, do I see this body of people doing this? There's just no one's coming together. And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, but I feel like there needs to be some brainstorming session to figure out events, and the Heifers does not, and I'm not going to complain here, but I am a little bit. The Heifers is not representative of what Southern Vermont is in terms of its art, its music, or anything. It is completely excluding all of that, as far as I'm concerned, as a musician here. And so...
Well, that's one thing.
And that's one thing.
As opposed to everything. Yeah.
Right, that's one thing. It's the biggest event, though. People in the New York Times read about the Heifers. So they come to Vermont, and what do they see? They don't see Brattleboro at all. They see the buildings of Brattleboro. And so I don't want to dominate. I just wanted to put that out there because I really would like to be involved in a discussion in the future as a musician, as an organizer, of bringing together these entities and creating a unity among the artists that live here. So,
thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to respond quickly to that. I sit on the board of the Arts Council of Windham County, and they did recently, I think 2 years ago, an economic impact study for Windham County. And they found that collectively, everything from somebody working for an arts organization, a design firm, anything within the arts, including the mom and pop sort of Geppetto, violin maker, or whatever it is, that collectively self-described working artists is the largest industry sector in southeastern Vermont. And the second part of that was that, if I'm not mistaken, those that responded to the survey, 80% of their earned income comes from elsewhere. So that's something that just kind of allow to ruminate. What does that mean? It's not necessarily a sign that they're not successful here in their own community, but that potentially they have to go elsewhere to earn the bread. Candace?
Unfortunately, there's something psychological in that because, you might be the greatest musician that plays sax, and then somebody says, did you hear so-and-so from Chicago's coming to play sax, could possibly play worse than you, but because somebody comes from far away, there's this psychological thing, and everyone wants to go see the exotic person who's visiting from far away. And this is what I heard when I moved. I'm a musician, and when I moved here, I spoke with somebody who's really awesome, and they travel all over the place, and I said, what's up with playing music here? And they said, I only do charity gigs in Brattleboro, but I make my money elsewhere. But what I will say is that when I lived in Jamaica Plain in Boston, I had a coffee house, and I only allowed people from Jamaica Plain to play the coffee house. And I would book, 3, 4, 5 acts sometimes a night, and there would be performance artists and people who did sacred chanting, and there would be, folk musicians and blues and all sorts of jazz. I mean, whatever somebody had cooking up in their living room, I would pull it out. And some of them were really great, and some of them, I actually auditioned people, so when folks really, when I didn't feel like I could listen to them for 45 minutes. Yeah, I would just say, I forget how I did it. But that would be wonderful, to have a coffee house that's really for local folks to perform at. That's something I'd be happy to help happen. It was something that just... Because one thing I'm really interested in is, what are we going to do? So these are all the ideas, but what might you commit to,
So hopefully we're gonna get to that. I think my agenda is almost thrown right out the window. Partially because a lot of people showed up, so it took us a while to get around. But these guys here, I'm hoping you all, if you can, I'm going to hopefully jump into my presentation shortly, just so you know exactly what these committees are about. But a big part of what we're doing tonight is getting people signed up to help get the rubber to meet the road, and not just throw around ideas. Yep.
So the things that I took away, just the more major things, were we need to do a good job of promoting things that are already happening in Brattleboro, folk arts and other events. We need to do a lot better, and speaking as someone who is was and is a little bit less of a young person, but still young enough to have a hard time breaking through. We need to do a better job of supporting ideas that young people have and activities or events that they might be running. As far as supporting what you were just saying, just brought up this For the dance festival, we do both. We bring in we have local people, and we bring in people from outside. And the way that I get around what I think does happen, which is like they're coming from New York City. They could have no anything better than somebody here. Like for example, Alyssa Hauser from the youth theater, who was on Broadway. The way I get around it is I just say, when I announce that Alyssa Hauser is teaching at the festival, I just say, Alyssa Hauser was on Broadway, also teaches at NEYT and private, you know what I mean? So there's people here that have incredible resumes doing events, and there is a way to get around that piece where we, you know what I'm saying? And then when you start to have activities that combine both the people from outside and the people from inside, that's how you start to get the people from inside to be able to do better with their living. So I feel like supporting the young people, definitely doing a better job of promoting and supporting the activities that are already happening, and a better job of really enhancing the arts events that do happen, besides Gallery Walk.
Okay.
Which I think is great already.
I'm going to just go in order of where I saw the hands. So Dora, Barbara, and then we'll come over here.
So I just want to say that the whole music thing is actually an example of something that Brattleboro lost out on when Northampton came alive. Northampton has the ability to not allow big names to play here, which makes it so that the local music scene isn't supported, because the venues are going to be supported by the big names, and then the local people then play as well on the off nights. So you know, it's an example of a thing that we lost out on back in history. It probably can't be undone. I don't know whether it can legally, but they've got that pretty much wrapped up. The big names play in Keene, they play in Bellows Falls, they don't play in Brattleboro, unless it's a charity event, and then they're allowed to play. So, you know, so the question is, what can we do? Are there other examples in other places where they have only a local music scene and they don't have a big music scene? I mean, we've managed to be able to get big jazz names. I mean, the Jazz Center seems to be able to, you know, get that. That doesn't seem to bother Northampton. You know, so it's one of those things where it's like, where is there a community that has a really vibrant local music scene without the big names, that they've been able to manage to support that and have a venue? Because one of the issues is a venue can't support itself if it's only going to be local, because there just aren't enough people that are going to come.
Well, with Austin, for example, I ran a conference down there, and I 6th Street that has basically every storefront is a live music venue. South by Southwest has played a big role in this, but musicians from all over the country, if not world, moved to Austin to become local musicians. Because they know they can gig, and they're going to get found, and there's an audience built in. And granted, the University of Texas is right there, which is 700 million students or something like that. It's mega, but that helps. So we're going to pop over here.
I just want to add that with the music, that Brattleboro has like the top names in classical music as well come here to play. So
jazz and classical.
Jazz and
It's not just the Jazz Center.
Right, so jazz and classical.
Yeah.
I just want to say quickly, because I know, you know, in case time gets away, I just want to make sure that if there are going to be groups, that people that aren't here, that maybe are a little bit disenfranchised, because we have quite a bit of those people in our community, that we make sure that as we're planning things, we have ways to engage them in the process. It can be really easy for people to talk about arts and not really think about the people who maybe never really have experience with art, and how do they get into that. So I just want to just put that out there, that we have to make sure that we are representing.
Give us some ways.
Well, maybe having somebody from like Clark Canal Association or the Feet Group, who maybe comes from poverty, who has maybe a strong influence in that community, be part of planning, as an example, or maybe people from Turning Point or Recovery,
Okay.
be part of the conversation.
So via the orgs.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't not, you know, include them in the
Youth
process.
council, like
Seniors, yeah.
So we had Barbara.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there's a ton of really professional, world-class artists that exist in this community. Part of what happens is that people hide out. It's as simple as that. They use, you know, it's an incubator. That's what traditionally Brattleboro has been. That doesn't mean that people aren't incubated. That, you know, we have to, like you said, include everybody. And that means the people that are successful at their chosen field are given the proper respect and allowed to be a professional in this community. If you don't have people here that represent these arts on a professional level, you're going to have kids that disappear or go to drugs or do this or do that. This community has to be allowed to attain a professional level, and people here are professional. Sandglass Theater, New England Youth Theater. So what we need is a continuity and marketing committee. And we need to research, and none of these things where it absorbs, I won't go into particulars, but hundreds of thousands of dollars that just fly out without addressing Vermonters. You want to get people to come to Vermont. You do that by having a healthy, happy community where they see success going on. And they know that they can go to Putney for this, or stay in Brattleboro for this, or this is going on. And allow people to excel at what they do. It's not just an incubator. It has to have a professional standard for people, for kids to accede to. And as far as music, you know, these bands fly back and forth all the time. We happen to be right now in a Brooklyn to Montreal pathway. Montreal's exploding. There's a ton of stuff going on. Future Collective, they brought in the Memories. I happen to be a Memories fan. Burger Records. King Tut. Does anybody know who King Tut is? Kyle Thomas went to BUHS. Huge, big star. Nobody here knows who he is. What?
Yeah.
All right.
There's long hair. Looks like a wizard.
And his brother is now working for Yves Saint Laurent. It's not a joke to me, right? I like making a living. And just because I'm an artist doesn't mean that I have to be a bum. And I'm sick of it. We've got tons of professional people here that have worked hard. It isn't just what you see when an artist presents something. It's the 20 years that went into that precedes that. So, you know, we need to understand the self-esteem issue here in town. And yeah, I love Brattleboro, but you know what? I did that Johnny Winter concert, and I loved it because the girls at Price Chopper were saying, I can't believe Johnny Winter's coming to Brattleboro. And all I could think of is, why not Brattleboro? Is there any reason why not Brattleboro? The answer is absolutely not. So all of these things that we're talking about are here. And we just need to find a way to access it for continuity, so everybody's included, and to market it properly, so that when the outside world looks at us, they're going, oh my God, I want to go there.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. So we're going to keep going back and forth. So I think
I wanted to echo what Cassandra said.
No, I got you.
I wanted to echo what
Remember me.
I wanted to echo what Cassandra said, and there's the organization in town, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, because there's a disenfranchised population who, even though you can walk down the street and there's so many free things to do on Gallery Walk, their parents don't even take their children to Gallery Walk because they're kind of like culturally segregated. It's not even economic because, you know, you don't have to have money to participate in all of these wonderful things that we do, but it's culturally segregated. And so I think we talked about in Keene when they're kind of adopting the park and the different businesses, you know, they're kind of mentoring a piece of land. But I think Brattleboro should strive more for mentorship, like what Brenda's doing with her dance program. She happens to have my little sister in there, and she's exposing my little sister from Big Brothers Big Sisters to art. And there is that criminal element, and there is culturally underprivileged people here that are kind of bringing the quality down in Brattleboro. So in a way, I wanted to encourage for us to keep in mind the mentoring possibilities we could have in this town.
So we'll go to Brian right next to you, and then we'll pop to the other end of the room.
And I'm sorry I forgot your name, but
Barbara.
In listening to your comment, and I agree fully. There's so many talented individuals and groups of people, artists and entertainers and various sorts. Theater. One thing that I don't know why it's so effective, but one thing the co-op does is they're producer of the month. right?
They what?
Producer of the month.
The co-op.
And it's been a very successful promotion for them. And so maybe instead of producer of the month, it's artist of the month or entertainer of the month, or did you know this person lived in Dummerston, or whatever, that type of thing, to go with the self-esteem idea. We could promote the assets that we have.
Okay. So we're going to go Frankie, and then we're going to come over here, and then pop back over there. A lot of hands, thank you. Yes, sir.
All the hot air just came out of my head. All right. I had night activity on this thing because there's nothing to really do after like maybe 9 o'clock besides go to a bar. And if we were trying to reinvigorate the youthful, populace of this community, that doesn't really make sense. So that's kind of contradictory. And I think it's important not to just totally, ignore our critical thought, because in the kind of defining our identity in that process, I think we should critically assess the situations that are actually happening, like the producer orientation of the community is down. Educated people, women that used to love to live in this community have gone on to other, we used to have the highest educated women, as like in southern rural Vermont. Just different things. They've left, they've gone to make more money elsewhere and so on and so forth because the community might not be as rewarding. We're not, like maybe doing some things. So I think a critical assessment of those things, don't quote unquote negative them, but like see them as a critical assessment and like see, like things that we could maybe fix and different situations. I think night activity is a pretty good one. I'll pick that up later. But to do that's not alcohol based.
Thank you. So we have hands here, and then we'll go to the other side of the room.
Jed, I'm just going to remind you, it's 45 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be quick.
So two things come to mind, and one is film. We've got Jay Craven, and we've got Ken Burns. That's something we could mark. We could become a destination for some kind of film festival. We have a good program through high school with a mentor. That was one idea. And the other is, we have a lot of massage therapists. I always picture kind of healing arts, like, little boutique hotels. People come for the week and they just check into, like, we turn an apartment into an RVO and we just, they get
a lot of therapies.
There's a lot of people who move here for 2 years to kind of get their life back together, and then they leave. There's a lot of people who come to catch their breath here.
So I'll put spot. And again, that touches, a lot of these things touch on who we were.
Right.
This was a destination for leisure activity. This was a destination for recreation. This was a destination for arts, culture, healing. And it is still in many ways, but maybe we're not fully living up to where we were. We haven't hit our own high water mark. So it's almost building, going back to Dick's comments, building ourselves back up.
Yeah, we have to go retro.
A couple of things. One thing I just want to mention, we really have felt the loss of the Brooks House, particularly the Bullseye, as a venue.
Okay.
I think that's one of the holes in terms of music venues. That was this destination as for local music, for lots of music. It's for dancing. This is another thing. We need places to dance. And not just dance classes, not just one particular type of dance, but dancing like party dancing.
Like adults.
Yeah. At 7 o'clock we start dancing.
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things that I love about Prince Edward Island is the way that they celebrate their local music scene with the Festival of Small Halls. So what they do, they have tons of fiddling. They have Kayleys every night of the week, and they feature different configurations of their local musicians. They go in on each other's gigs and sets all over the island. They market it for the whole summer, and the tourists know, based on the Buzz magazine that they put out, oh, here are all these Kayleys that happen all over the place. This is part of the Festival of Small Halls. There's going to be all these amazing musicians coming all over to these dinky little halls. They're all the ladies' aid little halls. They only hold maybe 50 people, and they sell out. all over the place in these little tiny places. We have plenty of those Grange locations.
Yeah.
So I think we could totally do that, especially if we have things like Puppets in the Green Mountains, which already helps celebrate smaller venues all over the place. We can totally do that. Totally do that.
I was at a leadership retreat in Burlington for the downtown organization, so it's all the downtown directors come together. And it was, I'm going to take a pause for station identification because some people might migrate out. So it was interesting to learn that we're not alone. Even the Burlingtons, I went into an artist discussion about artist representation in Burlington, and it was local artists in a round table, all with their head hanging, saying how difficult it was to make a living in Burlington, to get any public art off the ground, to get any notice from people from the local community. And it just seemed like the thread around the table was silo busting. It was just sort of like, whether it's institutional or friendship cliques, or I only go to this one venue, or that's my favorite place to eat and that's the only place I go. It was just sort of like all these communities are dealing with silo busting. So as a culture, we've kind of become insular, and now it's about kind of stripping that down and kind of opening ourselves up again. And there are lots of activities that can help us do that, right? So before, we have like another 20 minutes, so it doesn't look like anybody's running out. I'm not going to pull the fire alarm. Before you leave, I don't even think I'm going to get to my slideshow, even though it's been 2 hours. It's okay. It's all right. It'll come in handy at a future date. These cards are asking you if you'd like to participate in being a part of a committee, a task force, a team. We can figure out what we want to call ourselves. Okay? As a part of the National Main Streets program, which we are a part of, they've created this sort of 4-pillared approach. And they're outlined here, and there's a little bit of information about what you would expect to find in each of those committees. So one of the things that I made a commitment to when I took this job last November was to first listen to Brattleboro, get my finger on the pulse and realize, what are you guys already talking about? I'm new to this community, and I didn't want to import something from elsewhere that I knew worked in a community I lived in the past, or a project I did in the past. So this has been all sort of, for me, information gathering. It's the research end of it. We're getting into development. We're actually getting the rubber to meet the road. We're trying to now take these wonderful ideas that we have all over this room, all over this board, and starting to distill them and bring them down to earth. And some of them are going to be kind of what we can do next weekend, low-hanging fruit, to the boardwalk along Wantasticate or along the downtown, or the gondolas to Wantasticate, or what are those big audacious goals people were kind of coming up with, and putting them into somewhat of a matrix so we can work together. So, I look at the people in the room, and I know most of you, and I've had the pleasure to meet most of you and spend some time with you, and I don't think there's anything on this board or those boards that we can't achieve together if we work together. So this is an opportunity for us to reconstitute the organization, now known as the Downtown Alliance, formerly Building a Better Brattleboro, and really get some teeth back in our mouth so we can grab onto some of these things and really run with it. So one of the things I did do is some of you on Facebook have seen some of these images, but for those that haven't, I'm going to take the last few minutes to just go through some of these images so you can see kind of what some of this might look like. Okay? So here's Main Street. This is Main Street, Brattleboro. There's no cars. There's widened sidewalks. There's a tree belt. There's bike lanes. So what does that look like? Upper level housing with a green roof. Hey, pie in the sky, right? But that's what it looks like. Using the assets we already have, the big retaining walls that are, that you come into on train and via car. Using those as a way to market ourselves and welcome people to our community. They're right now just slate. Oh no, what just happened? Okay, back.
They're not slate, they're concrete.
Concrete, whatever it is. So, again, when it rains on Main Street, it's a small river when we get heavy rain. And that feeds into the whetstone, which then feeds into the Connecticut. And a lot of that is bringing toxins down from street use, from automobile use. How can we begin integrating rain gardens and other natural elements to help mitigate some of that? Here's our dry dock right out here for human-powered paddling and what have you. You know, we do have a marina just up north and across the way. That's great. But in terms of a transit node, you get off the train, you park your car, you come across the bridge, and you get to enjoy the water. You get to go around and paddle around the island, come back, have lunch. Here's our whetstone pathway, recreational trail. What about these big intersections we have? Could we bring public art to the streetscape? Benches. You know, I constantly hear the argument that if we bring benches, we're bringing homeless people. That's not an equation. That math doesn't flesh itself out. You know, I was just up in Burlington, there's benches everywhere. Not everyone had a homeless person with a newspaper over their head sleeping. People are out eating ice creams, enjoying themselves. So could we use some of our creativity, some of our made in Vermont artisans to create funky little seating areas? This is behind Shin La. Right now there's like old burnt out mattresses and beat up old furniture and used tires back there. We have these little alleyways and these little nooks that could be explored and turned into funky little environments. That could be outdoor cafe seating for them. You know, what about living food systems downtown? You know, really tapping into, you know, the fact that we are an agro-central community and that we don't have to go to the periphery, to the farmland to learn that. We have farm to fork restaurants. Why don't we grow some of our food downtown? More ideas for public art. We have.
Why isn't there a garden on the municipal giant
Exactly.
lot?
No, a farm.
Municipal building farm.
Absolutely, a micro farm. You know, here's more ideas. I mean, this is just, you know, when we talk about public art, sometimes people they clench and they say, oh no, I have to live with something for the next 1,000 years. So they have a hard time saying yes to it. But there's communities like Rutland. When I was up in Burlington, you know, people were talking about public arts campaigns, and of course San Francisco and Philadelphia and so on and so forth comes up. And then somebody said, what about Rutland? They have people coming in on tour buses to tour the murals in Rutland, Vermont. You know, so this is something that this organization is pushing, and we want to, you know, it'll start with one, and before you know it, we'll have 10, 15, 20, and they could be rotated. They could have 5-year lifespans and get a new one up. They don't have to be, you know, etched in here for the next 1,000 years. You know, this is Las Ramblas in Barcelona. That used to be, you know, just like Church Street, just like Pearl Street in Boulder, just like Main Street in Ithaca, that used to be an automobile thoroughfare. And that is the desk. People fly there. Venice, places like this, so they can have that experience. Outdoor theater, free, folding chair theater. Come on out on a Friday night, you know. Artwork and lighting. This is Main Street USA Disney. Forgive me for even bringing that up. However, what are they missing here? There's no streetlights.
There's no trees.
There are no people.
There's trees. Yeah, there's trees.
There's no trucks.
Where are the people?
But there's no streetlights. The point of this slide is they actually illuminate the architecture, and the ambient lighting comes down onto the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah.
So smart.
You know,
I hate those.
There's no nature on nature.
this is somewhat whimsical, but again, the alleyways. How do we treat the alleyways so they're inviting, or they become a space unto themselves? Could there be installation art? Could there be a new, you know, facade or something that would encourage people to come in? Could there be an outdoor little summertime little cafe or something there? A lot of people talked about the linkages of public transportation. Could we just have a free circulator, a jump on, jump off bus? You know, the idea of public art. You know, this Plaza Park right here. You know, the idea of a rock garden, some botanicals, and bringing this fountain back to life. Right now, it's a bird bath. You know, how do we have this be a major attraction? You know, opening up these sight lines so people can go behind the river garden and actually see the views. Having a, you know, sort of a food truck rodeo or something like that. This is a local sculptor. He's in Putney. Chuck Jennifer. He gets commissions from like UNESCO grants and stuff to do World Heritage sites, and he's in our backyard. He has nothing on display in this area. You know, treating our facades, creative, whimsical. This is going to get torn down. Let's do something fun with it before it gets torn down. You know, this is a little plug for a vision that we had for contemporary arts, a mixed-use contemporary arts and wellness center on Elliott Street, or Flat Street, excuse me. Infill development. Some of these buildings are built for upper floor developments. So if you want to get critical mass, if you want to get more downtown housing, mixed-use space, you know, again, the developers, the people who would have the ability to you know, the traction and the resources to do so, you know, have to let it be known that there's a desire for this type of development in downtown. You know, if you look at an aerial view of downtown Brattleboro, about 60% of the land use is surface parking lots. You know? So, you know, here, these are, again, just kind of just generic sketches of, you know, it doesn't all have to be just, you know, typical brick and mortar. We can do something that is maybe a little more contemporary. You know, there's one of the things of the said Seveds report for long-term economic development is becoming a leader in green building technology and green building materials. Why not use downtown Brattleboro as a beta site to put those materials into use? You know, here's our skate park on the Elm Street parking lot. Here's, you know, some ideas for street banners for marketing ourselves, you know, upcoming festivals and events, things of that nature. You go to any downtown anywhere, and they have banners everywhere. And I don't want to just have banners everywhere. It should have a purpose, and they're not for corporate sponsorship, but they're for, you know, identifying what we have coming up, maybe historical perspectives or an event around the corner. You know, just so people walking and driving up and down our streets are getting those visual cues. You know, this building, you know, it's had some really glorious uses in the past, so I've been told. And it's withering on a vine. That building is the Brooklyn of Brattleboro, all by itself.
I thought it was a Superfund kind of chemical dump.
No.
The biggest issue is it's in the newly defined floodplain post Irene, so the insurance.
Where is that?
It's right over here. It's like the T Lounge is right here, and you go back behind to Arch Street.
Yeah, okay.
The Whetstone Station is here.
Yeah, it's got a great facade on the river.
And so these are the last three sides. We had post Irene.
Jake, wait, where's
Yes.
your Harmony parking lot vision?
He's gonna get it.
We're getting it. We're getting it.
It should be yours.
So what we have coming our way, and there's a sample, or the draft was there. I don't know if it got circulated or not. But post-Irene, the federal government, through EPA and HUD, sponsored a group of professional consultants that are experienced in disaster recovery. They were at Katrina and other, you know, major, you know, the oil spill in the Gulf and all of these in Louisiana and all these areas. And they came to a number of downtowns, and Brattleboro was one of them. So they've left behind almost something similar to a master plan for downtown Brattleboro. And this is one of their aerial views. And you look at things like, they're talking about infill development, they're talking about the cultural campus here, taking down the Tri-State building, bringing something to define this edge and this curve. Looking at addressing the waterfront. So with this document, we have the opportunity, and this is sort of a blowout, so this is Flat Street, and this is their interpretation, doing another footbridge from the co-op's parking lot right directly over to NEYT, the Brattleboro Music Center, the church building, and having a cultural campus here. And then, of course, that links to Boys and Girls Club, the Latches facility, the Brattleboro Museum. So we now have a corridor right through the heart of our community that straddles the Whetstone Recreational Trail that is also now sort of a cultural corridor. How can we build upon that? So there are federal and state resources that can be brought to bear for this type of work. We've got a blueprint for it. So what we're trying to do is kind of get the grassroots to meet some of the top-down visioning that has been left on the plate for us. And so here's, you know, your meditation garden. You know, here's potentially your place where you can go and have concerts or just have a beautiful, when people come across from New Hampshire, what are they met with right now? How are they greeted? You know, you folks here, I think a lot of you hopefully have signed that card, and I also have a lot of folks that have already expressed interest in participating in one of those 4 committees. So my charge, in many ways, is to bring you guys back in as working groups. And it may start with, you know, priming a wall. It may start with planting some tulips on a street corner. It may start with you know, a funky flea market on Flat Street just to see what it would look like to close it down and have a larger festival next year. So I think Dora makes a very good point that, you know, in order to get to the top of that mountain, we have to take the first step across the bridge, you know, and then start linking those together and we'll get momentum.